故事从简单开始，逐步提升，持续下来，你会惊讶自己在不知不觉中理解更复杂的英文文章。故事开始。
Alice was sitting by the riverbank on a warm, sunny afternoon. She was feeling a little bored. She had been with her sister, who was reading a book, but the book had no pictures or conversations. Alice liked stories with pictures and talking characters, so she felt tired and sleepy. She wondered what it would be like to have an adventure. Suddenly, something very strange happened. Alice saw a white rabbit run past her. This was not an ordinary rabbit. It was wearing a waistcoat and holding a pocket watch. The rabbit looked very worried and kept saying, oh dear, I shall be late." Alice was very surprised. She had never seen a talking rabbit before. Curiosity filled her mind. She thought, maybe I should follow him and see where he is going. Alice got up quickly and ran after the rabbit. The rabbit ran across the garden and jumped into a large rabbit hole. Without thinking twice, Alice jumped in after him. She felt herself falling down, down, down. The fall seemed to go on forever. She passed by shelves, cupboards, maps, and pictures. Some of the things even seemed to be moving as she fell. Alice felt a little dizzy, but she also felt excited. She wondered what kind of world she would find at the bottom. Finally, Alice landed softly on a pile of dry leaves. She looked around and realized she was in a strange hallway. The hall was long and full of doors. Some doors were very small, and others were large. On a small table, Alice saw a tiny golden key. She tried to open the small doors with it, but they were all locked. She felt frustrated and sad. Then she noticed a tiny door hidden behind a curtain. She tried the key, and it fit, but when she looked through the door, she saw a beautiful garden on the other side. It was full of flowers, trees, and sunlight. Alice wanted to go inside, but the door was too small for her to fit through. Alice felt disappointed. She wanted to go to the garden very badly. She noticed a bottle on the table with a label that said, "Drink me." The bottle looked strange, but Alice was curious. She drank the liquid inside. Suddenly, she began to shrink smaller and smaller. Her head went down, her arms got thinner, and soon she was the perfect size to go through the small door. Alice was amazed. "Now I can enter the garden," she said with a happy smile. But then she realized another problem. She had left the key on the table, and she could not reach it anymore. Alice began to think carefully. She remembered seeing a cake with the words "Eat me" written on it. She decided to try it. She took a small piece of the cake and ate it. At once, she started to grow taller and taller. She grew so much that she nearly touched the ceiling. Alice was scared. She did not know how to control her size. She wanted to go back to her smaller size so she could open the door and enter the garden. Alice thought about what to do. She felt a little nervous, but she was also very brave. She tried to calm herself and think carefully. She realized that the adventure had just begun, and she would need to be clever and careful. Even though the hallway was strange and confusing, Alice felt excited because she knew something magical was waiting for her in the garden. While she was thinking, she noticed a little bottle under the table. It was too small for her to pick up easily, but she tried anyway. She drank a tiny bit, and slowly she became small again. This time, she could reach the key, open the small door, and slip into the beautiful garden. Alice felt proud of herself. She had solved the problem by thinking carefully and trying different things. She was ready for whatever adventures awaited her in this new world. As Alice stepped into the garden, she looked around in wonder. There were bright flowers, green grass, and strange paths that twisted and turned. She could hear birds singing, but their songs sounded magical. Everything looked unusual, but also exciting. Alice knew that this was the start of an amazing adventure, and she felt brave enough to explore. Even though Alice was still a little confused and a bit nervous, she reminded herself that curiosity and courage could help her. She took a deep breath and walked down the first path she saw. She wondered who or what she would meet first. Maybe it would be a talking animal, or maybe something even more surprising. Alice felt her heart beat with excitement. She knew that this world was full of surprises, and she could not wait to see what would happen next. And so, Alice's adventure in Wonderland truly began. She had followed the strange rabbit, fallen down the rabbit hole, and found herself in a magical world where anything could happen. The garden was just the first step. Alice knew that she would have to be clever, brave, and curious to explore everything. She smiled, ready to face the wonders and challenges of this new world, not knowing how strange or funny things might become. Alice had not been in the strange hallway for very long, but she already felt confused and overwhelmed. After drinking from the little bottle, she suddenly began to grow again. This time, she grew much faster than before. Her feet stayed on the floor, but her head rose higher and higher. Soon, she was so tall that her head touched the ceiling. Alice felt uncomfortable and frightened. She did not know why her body kept changing size, and she wished she could return to being normal. As she grew taller, Alice began to cry. Big tears rolled down her cheeks and dropped onto the floor. She cried harder and harder because she felt lonely and scared. She did not know where she was or how to get home. Her tears formed a large pool on the floor. The pool grew wider and deeper as Alice continued crying. She had never cried so much before. After a while, Alice noticed something strange. The hallway began to feel different. The floor felt wet under her feet. Alice looked down and realized that she was standing in a pool made of her own tears. The water reached up to her ankles. She felt embarrassed and sad. "I should be ashamed of myself," Alice said. "A big girl like me should not cry like this." Just then, Alice noticed that she was starting to shrink again. Slowly, her body became smaller and smaller. Soon, she was small enough that the pool of tears became very deep around her. She was no longer standing in the water, she was floating. Alice tried to swim, but she was not very good at it. She kicked her legs and moved her arms, trying to stay afloat. As Alice swam, she noticed that she was not alone in the pool. Nearby, she saw a mouse swimming through the water. The mouse looked just as surprised as Alice. She was happy to see another living creature and decided to speak to it. Alice tried to remember her school lessons. She knew that mice might understand French, so she said, "Où est ma chatte?" which means, "Where is my cat?" The mouse was not pleased. It jumped and swam away quickly. Alice realized that she had made a mistake. Of course, a mouse would be afraid of a cat. "Oh dear," Alice said, "I am sorry. I forgot that mice do not like cats." She tried again, speaking more kindly. She told the mouse that her cat was very gentle and good at catching mice, but she meant it as praise. This only made things worse. The mouse looked frightened and upset. Alice quickly apologized again. She explained that she would not talk about cats anymore. The mouse slowly calmed down and swam closer. Alice felt relieved. She did not want to be alone in this strange place. She asked the mouse why it looked so unhappy. The mouse sighed and began to tell a long and serious story about its past. It spoke in a slow, quiet voice, as if it was reading from a book. Alice tried very hard to listen, but the story was difficult to follow. The mouse used long words and spoke about things Alice did not understand. She became distracted and soon stopped paying attention. She started thinking about her cat again and wondered what it was doing at home. Without thinking, Alice mentioned her cat once more. This made the mouse very angry. It swam away quickly, splashing water everywhere. Alice felt bad and lonely again. She realized that she needed to be more careful with her words. In this strange world, even small mistakes could cause big problems. As Alice floated in the pool, she noticed many other animals around her. There were birds, ducks, and other strange creatures, all swimming in the water. Everyone looked cold and uncomfortable. They were all wet and unhappy. Alice felt sorry for them. She wanted to help. Soon, they all swam toward the shore together. When they reached dry ground, everyone gathered around. They all wanted to get dry, but no one knew how. The animals talked loudly, each giving different ideas. Some of them spoke at the same time, and Alice could not understand everything they said. At last, the mouse stood up and asked everyone to be quiet. It said it knew the best way to get dry. The animals listened carefully. The mouse began to explain something very serious and boring. It talked about history and important events from long ago. The mouse believed that listening to serious topics would dry them off. Alice tried to listen politely, but she felt confused and tired. The story was long and not very interesting to her. Still, she stood quietly and waited. After some time, Alice noticed that she was feeling a little drier. The others were too. Even though the mouse's plan was strange, it seemed to work. Next, a bird called the dodo suggested a different idea. It said they should have a race. The race did not have clear rules. Everyone ran around in a circle in different directions. Some ran fast, others slowly. After a while, the dodo said the race was over. Everyone was confused. "Who won?" they asked. The dodo thought carefully and said that everyone had won. Alice was surprised. Then the dodo said that everyone must receive a prize. It asked Alice to give out the prizes. Alice looked into her pocket and found some candies. She handed one to each animal. Everyone seemed pleased. The animals also said that Alice should receive a prize. The dodo gave her back one of her own candies. Alice found this very funny, but she smiled and thanked them. She felt happy to be part of the group. Soon, the animals began to leave. One by one, they walked away, disappearing into different paths. Alice was left alone again. She felt a little sad, but she also felt stronger than before. She had learned that this world was full of surprises, and she would need to be patient and kind. Alice looked around and wondered what would happen next. She did not know where to go, but she knew she had to keep moving forward. Even though she was still confused, she felt curious and brave. Her adventure in Wonderland was becoming stranger, but also more exciting. Alice stood quietly after the animals began to leave. The strange meeting by the pool of tears was over, but Alice's adventure was far from finished. She felt a little lonely again, but she reminded herself to stay calm. Wonderland was a strange place, and she needed to be patient. Soon, Alice noticed the mouse again. It seemed to be walking slowly away, looking serious and thoughtful. Alice remembered that she had upset the mouse earlier by talking about her cat. She did not want to make the same mistake again. She followed the mouse carefully and spoke in a gentle voice. "Please don't be angry," Alice said. "I really want to hear your story. You said you had a long tale to tell." The mouse stopped and looked at Alice. It seemed pleased that she was interested. The mouse nodded slowly and began to speak. It said it would tell its story in a special way. Alice listened closely, ready to pay attention this time. The mouse's tale was very strange. It was long, serious, and full of difficult words. The mouse spoke about laws, judges, and punishment. It talked about arguments and trials, and about being accused of things it did not do. The story sounded sad and unfair. Alice tried her best to understand, but it was hard. The mouse's voice was calm, but the story felt heavy. As the mouse spoke, Alice imagined the story in her mind. She pictured judges standing tall and pointing fingers. She imagined animals being blamed and punished, but the mouse's tale went on, and Alice's thoughts began to wander. She looked at the mouse's tail as it moved behind it. Suddenly, Alice had a strange thought. She wondered if the mouse's tail was really about its tail. The words sounded the same to her. She stared at the long, thin tail trailing behind the mouse. In her mind, she imagined the story written in the shape of a tail, long and winding. Without meaning to be rude, Alice said, "Your tail is very long." The mouse stopped speaking at once. It turned around quickly and looked angry. "It is a tail," the mouse said sharply. "Not a tail." Alice felt embarrassed. She quickly apologized. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just confused." But the mouse was already upset. It walked away, shaking its head. Alice watched it disappear and felt bad again. She realized that even when she tried to be polite, she still made mistakes. Wonderland was confusing, and its creatures were easily offended. Alice sighed and looked around. She was alone once more. She began walking forward, not knowing where she was going. Soon, she noticed something unusual above her. A pigeon was sitting in a tree, watching her closely. The pigeon looked nervous and suspicious. "What are you doing here?" the pigeon asked sharply. Alice looked up in surprise. "I'm just walking," she said. "I'm trying to find my way." The pigeon did not seem convinced. It flapped its wings and said, "You look like a serpent." Alice was shocked. "I am not a serpent," she said. "I am a little girl." The pigeon shook its head. "That's what all serpents say," it replied. "You are probably here to steal eggs." Alice did not understand. "I don't want eggs," she said. "I eat bread and butter." The pigeon looked confused, but still afraid. It explained that serpents often climbed trees to eat bird eggs. Alice tried to explain that she had no bad intentions. She told the pigeon that she had never hurt a bird in her life. After a long argument, the pigeon finally seemed to calm down. It watched Alice carefully, then flew away. Alice felt tired. She had talked to so many strange creatures, and each one misunderstood her. Alice continued walking until she came to a small clearing. In the center was a table with a bottle on it. The bottle had a label that said, "Drink me." Alice stopped and thought carefully. She remembered what had happened before. Drinking strange liquids could make her grow or shrink. She decided to be more careful this time. She took a very small sip. Nothing happened at first. She waited, then took another sip. Slowly, she began to grow taller again. Alice sighed. "Here we go again," she said. As she grew, Alice tried to stay calm. She reminded herself that changes were normal in Wonderland. Soon, she was tall enough to see over the bushes. In the distance, she saw a beautiful garden. It looked even more lovely than before. Alice felt excited. She wanted to reach it, but before she could move, she noticed a small cake on the table. It had the words, "Eat me," written on it. Alice smiled. "I suppose this will make me smaller again," she said. She took a bite, and soon she began to shrink. This time, Alice felt more confident. She was learning how Wonderland worked. She was not as scared as before. When she reached the right size, she stepped away from the table and looked around. Suddenly, she heard a loud voice. "Who are you?" the voice demanded. Alice turned and saw a strange creature with a long neck and wide eyes. It looked serious and curious. Alice took a deep breath. "I hardly know, sir," she said honestly. "I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I've changed so many times since then." The creature frowned. "Explain yourself," it said. Alice tried her best. She talked about growing and shrinking, about falling down the rabbit hole, and about meeting strange animals. As she spoke, she realized how strange her story sounded, even to herself. The creature listened carefully, but did not seem satisfied. "That is very confusing," it said. Alice nodded. "Yes, it is," she replied. As the creature left, Alice felt thoughtful. She realized that Wonderland was not just strange. It was a place that tested her patience, her kindness, and her ability to think clearly. She was no longer just following curiosity. She was learning about herself. Alice looked ahead and smiled. She had survived falling down a rabbit hole, swimming in her own tears, and confusing many animals. Even though she felt tired, she also felt stronger. She knew that more adventures were waiting. She took a step forward, ready to continue her journey. Wonderland was unpredictable, but Alice was learning how to face it. With courage, curiosity, and a little patience, she believed she could handle whatever came next. And so, Alice walked on, deeper into Wonderland, not knowing what strange characters or silly problems she would meet next, but ready to face them all. Alice had been walking for a short while when she suddenly heard a familiar voice. It sounded nervous and hurried. She looked around and realized it was the White Rabbit again. He was dressed neatly as always and seemed very upset. He was talking to himself and looking everywhere, as if he had lost something important. "Oh dear, the rabbit said. "I shall be too late. The Duchess will be furious if I don't find them." Alice felt happy to see the rabbit again. She thought maybe he could help her find her way. The rabbit saw Alice, but did not recognize her. Without stopping, he pointed at her and said, "Mary Ann, go home at once and fetch me my gloves and my fan." Before Alice could explain who she was, the rabbit rushed away. Alice stood still for a moment, surprised. "He thinks I am his servant," she said to herself. "How strange. But maybe I should see where he lives." Feeling curious, Alice followed the rabbit to a small house. The house looked neat and tidy. There was a door at the front and windows on each side. Alice went inside without knocking. She found herself in a small room with a table by the window. On the table were a pair of white gloves and a fan. "These must be the rabbit's things," Alice said. She picked up the fan and gloves. While holding the fan, she noticed how hot the room felt. She began waving the fan to cool herself. As she did, she suddenly felt strange again. "Oh no," Alice said softly. "I'm changing again." Slowly, she began to grow. At first, she was not too worried. She thought she would stop growing soon. But she kept getting bigger and bigger. Her head touched the ceiling, and her feet pressed hard against the floor. Alice realized she was growing too much and too fast. She tried to leave the room, but she was now too big to fit through the door. She sat down heavily on the floor. One arm stuck out the window, and one foot was pressed against the wall. She felt trapped. "This is terrible," Alice said. "Why does this always happen to me?" Outside the house, the White Rabbit returned. He walked up to the door and tried to open it, but it would not move. He heard Alice inside and became frightened. He ran around the house, calling for help. Soon, many animals gathered outside. There were birds, lizards, and other creatures. They looked up at the house and talked loudly. The rabbit explained that something large was inside his house and blocking everything. One small lizard was pushed forward by the others. His name was Bill. He looked nervous. The rabbit said, "Bill, you must go down the chimney and see what's inside." Bill did not want to go, but the others forced him. Alice, inside the house, heard the noise. She guessed what they were planning. She looked up at the chimney and waited. Suddenly, she heard a scrambling sound. Bill was coming down the chimney. When he reached the fireplace, Alice kicked out with her foot as hard as she could. There was a loud crash. Bill flew back up the chimney and into the air. Outside, the animals watched him fly like a rocket. He landed far away, and everyone gasped. "The chimney is clear," someone shouted. The animals began throwing stones at the house. Alice watched in surprise as the stones turned into little cakes when they landed inside. One of the cakes hit Alice near the head. Alice picked it up and read the words on it. "Eat me," she thought carefully. "If I eat this, something will happen," she said. "I hope it makes me smaller." She took a small bite. At once, she began to shrink. She grew smaller and smaller until she was small enough to move freely again. She quickly ran out of the house before anyone could stop her. Once outside, Alice ran into the woods. She did not stop until she felt safe. Her heart was beating fast, but she felt proud. She had escaped another strange situation. Alice rested under a tree and thought about everything that had happened. She realized that growing and shrinking was becoming normal for her. She was learning how to handle these changes. As she rested, Alice noticed a small caterpillar sitting on a mushroom nearby. The caterpillar was smoking a hookah and looked very calm. Alice felt that another strange conversation was about to begin, but before she could speak, Alice reminded herself to be careful with her words. She had learned many lessons already. In Wonderland, nothing was simple, and every action had a result. Alice stood up slowly. She felt ready to continue her journey. Even though she did not know what would happen next, she knew she was becoming braver and wiser. The white rabbit was gone. The house was behind her, and the forest stretched out in front of her. Alice took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready for the next adventure that Wonderland had prepared for her.
如果你喜欢今天的故事，别忘了按下赞，让我知道你喜欢这样的英文故事哦。想看更多简单又好懂的英文故事吗？快去看看我的其他影片，跟着故事慢慢变厉害。今天你学到哪个单字或句子最喜欢呢？或者你想看我下一集讲哪个故事，都可以在留言区打卡告诉我，我会看每一则留言哦。别忘了每天来打卡学英文，慢慢你会变得更厉害。